Wish TV. All Indiana Politics
is your premier source for Indiana politics.
Focusing on issues that matter to you.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage, exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders, expert analysis on critical legislation. From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Now, from Wish TV, your local news source. This is All Indiana Politics.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome to another edition of All Indiana Politics. I'm Phil Sanchez. Both Indiana Republicans and Democrats in Congress say we could face Iranian retaliation here at home. This after a week of airstrikes on Iran. Trump administration officials have briefed members of Congress on the operation. I talked to Senator Todd Young about his takeaways. Our Garrett Berquist talked to Congressman Andre Carson. We begin with Senator Todd Young. I talked to him just moments after news broke that President Trump had fired Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. Senator, good to see you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's great to be with you, Phil.
Before we get rolling on everything that has taken place in Iran, I want to get your reaction on the new information that we got about Kristi Noem a little while ago.
So Secretary Noem has through the decision of the president, she's being placed in a different position. I don't really have much information about why that is. Maybe the president thinks she's particularly well situated to serve him faithfully and successfully in another role. Maybe it's because he thinks that Senator Mullen, soon to be Secretary Mullen, I expect, can do an excellent job. I believe in Senator Mullen. I know he understands this issue set of Homeland Security. He has a great work ethic, but most importantly, he has the trust and confidence of the President of the United States, which is the most important attribute for this role during a dangerous time.
Okay, we'll get moving on to what's happening overseas now in the Middle East. Your biggest takeaway from the administration briefing with Iran?
You know, my biggest takeaway is the top cabinet officials, Secretary of Defense, Director of Central Intelligence, Secretary of State, and then the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Kane. They're all doing their very best during this difficult wartime situation to make sure they bring the conflict to a close quickly, that they defeat this regime of the Islamic Republic, or at least neutralize their ability to develop any nuclear weapons moving forward, or missiles which could harm America or our interests. I don't love how we got here. In fact, I am very troubled about how we got here, and I've been clear about that. Congress needs to do its oversight responsibilities a lot better, something I've emphasized quite a bit over the months and years I've been here. And but we're here. The president made a tough call. The American people, after the fact, now that we're in the war, have to be persuaded that this was the right decision. And I'm going to do my best to support our near-term efforts and bring this to a close quickly.
Does the Trump administration have a clear goal, in your opinion?
You know, the goals, the ones I just laid out, no nuclear weapons development and neutralize the missile capacity, those are pretty clear to me. And I would say there's all these legal questions which are interesting, but not particularly relevant when it comes to dealing with the threat at hand. Things about imminence. And whether or not there was an imminent threat. This is sort of the war powers law that's been important to me, and I think it should be very important to all Americans. But those are secondary questions, I think, now, Phil, now that we actually have Hoosier boots on the ground in the region. We have people fighting, and it's a heightened danger level for the American people in our homeland.
How concerned should the folks here in Indiana be, or even really across the country, about possible retaliation and attacks here?
Well, I think we should take it very seriously. We are blessed to be in a country that is protected by the best military in the world, protected by two vast oceans. We have a lot of friends in the world, but it's a dangerous place. And I do have to say that in recent years, it's become a lot more dangerous in large measure because we had unprotected borders. There are people in this country, some of whom hail from the Islamic Republic of Iran and others who are here illegally. I have some real homeland security concerns there, so we should be praying for the best and for all those who are charged with making sure that we get the best outcome. And then with respect to our troops, of course, we all want them to be successful and come home quickly and safely. So Hoosiers should be engaged, certainly, and hope that we can end this as quickly as possible.
What about cyber attacks, Senator? Should we be concerned about that?
Well, we have seen in recent history the Iranians engage in cyber attacks, whether it's dis or misinformation, cyber theft, or to try and disable certain types of systems and attack our critical infrastructure. So on all those fronts, I feel like our Homeland Security professionals and others are focused on that problem set, but there's definitely a risk. I have to be candid.
Let's bring in Congressman Andre Carson. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
What an honor. Thank you.
What were your biggest takeaways from the administration's briefing on Iran?
Well, without speaking out of school, we're still looking very deeply at President Trump's launching of major military operations in Iran alongside Israel without really a declared war or explicit congressional approval. There's been no justification to Congress or to the American people explaining why this escalation was even necessary.
In that briefing, were you able to get any clarity on the Trump administration's goals?
I don't think anyone has clarity. I think this pattern of threatened action, build up forces, strike without oversight is exactly the kind of abuse of executive powers the War Powers Resolution was designed to prevent. My colleagues and I, we demand an immediate briefing from the White House. Any further military action must come from Congress at this point.
Based on what you heard in that briefing, do you anticipate any American ground forces being committed?
There's been an indication that the president may send ground forces, which concerns me. The War Powers Resolution exists precisely to prevent unilateral war decisions by the president. This vote that we will be taking is not symbolic. It is a constitutional check in line with the vision of the founding fathers. If we allow Donald Trump to wage war without debate or authorization, we effectively surrender the legislative body's most serious responsibility to the executive branch.
Senate Armed Services Committee Chair Roger Wicker says to expect a potential supplemental defense appropriations bill. How would you vote on that?
I'm not in favor of, I was against the supplemental. And I think what needs to happen is that, we have to really define what we're looking at. Diplomacy should have been our first line of defense against nuclear proliferation. It appeared that negotiations were proceeding and promising, but the Iran strikes have closed the door really on very serious negotiations for now. So the only sustainable way to prevent Iran from obtaining a nuclear weapon is through very serious, verifiable diplomacy backed by inspections, like we had under President Obama with the JCPOA or the Iranian nuclear deal. So I think these supplementals are really window dressing a larger problem down the road.
At this point, how concerned should we be here in Indiana about potential Iranian-inspired lone wolf terrorist attacks?
As it relates to a local attack, I'm always concerned about an ongoing war, a never-ending war where our local assets could be jeopardized. Our stadiums could be vulnerable. Our major events could be used to make some symbolic point by extremist elements or lone wolves or even sleeper cells. So that's the fight that we're continuing to fight. I raised this point a week ago with the CIA and with the FBI and with Homeland Security. And so it's something that I will be engaged with the director of OD&I, Tulsi Gabbard, who I serve with, and others, because that is my paramount concern, making sure Americans are safe at home and abroad.
What about cyber attacks?
Well, cyber attacks are critically important. Iran does have cyber capabilities, perhaps not to the degree yet of China and Russia, of whom they have a very cozy relationship with, but they still have the ability to impact communities, grids, possibly our electoral system, our electric systems. in smaller communities, but still of note enough to cause enough damage that would hinder us in the very near future.
All right, coming up, a familiar name under a new label. We talked to former Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard about his decision to run for statewide office. Welcome back. Former Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard is running for Secretary of State. Ballard is running as an independent candidate. He talked to our government reporter, Garrett Berquist.
Ballard served 2 terms as mayor as a Republican, but he tells me he no longer believes either major party reflects what voters are looking for.
When politics becomes this toxic, it's essential to have an independent voice overseeing our elections.
Ballard says he wants to get partisan politics out of the work of the state's chief election officer.
I really want to bring a different tenor to that office, if you will. I want it to be as nonpartisan as possible. I want to run it in a low-key manner and in a professional way. And also, the politics now are toxic.
Can an independent candidate win in Indiana?
Absolutely. Over the last few years, been over 240 independents run in the state of Indiana. 52% won their election. Over half won their election. Most people will be surprised at that number, but that's what happened. Hasn't happened on a statewide level, but locally it happens all the time.
He says he would not endorse or donate to any candidate while in office. Ballard says he would create a voter guide for every election. It would include sample ballots and brief information about candidates and ballot questions.
That isn't done in Indiana. It is done successfully in other states. We have such low voter turnout in Indiana, and I think a large part of that is because people don't know what's happening at the voting booth. They don't know what to do. They don't know the person. They don't know anything. So if we push this out to them, which I think is a really good idea, then I think we have a really good chance of increasing voter turnout.
He'll have to gather signatures equaling 2% of the total number of votes cast in the last Secretary of State's race. That's about 37,000 signatures. He has until noon on June 30th to collect them. What do you say to people who say, well, if you're running as an independent candidate, all you're going to do is peel away votes from the Republican or Democratic nominee and allow the other major party to win?
If I peel away votes, it's going to make sure that I win. That's the intent. I'm not trying to be a spoiler. I'm trying to win this race because I think it's important that the office be independent and nonpartisan and effective.
Ballard won't have a final head count of his opponents until this summer. The Libertarian Party will nominate its Secretary of State candidate on March 21st. The Democratic and Republican parties will make their nominations in June. I'm Garrett Bergquist for Wish TV and WishTV.com.
Democratic candidate for Indiana's Secretary of State Bo Bai says, as a fellow Marine, I appreciate Greg Ballard's service to our country and his service to the city of Indianapolis. This race is a referendum on Diego Morales' tenure as Secretary of State, and we are building the only campaign that can defeat him, put an end to the blatant corruption, and restore the office to all Hoosiers. Diego Morales, meanwhile, also releasing his own statement. He says the same group of people pushing an independent candidate are the same ones who failed to stop Secretary Morales in 2022 and Governor Braun in 2024. Their record is one of consistent failure. As November approaches, Secretary Morales stands on a record of results. He has strengthened election integrity through enhanced voter ID and proof of citizenship requirements. He's driving economic growth, by keeping Indiana as the best place to start a business. All right, coming up, Indiana's best political team weighs in on Ballard's chances in a potential four-way competition for Secretary of State.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Wish TV.
All right, welcome back to All Indiana Politics as we welcome in two members of Indiana's best political team, Republican Matt Bell and Democrat Lindsay Haight. Good to see you both.
Thank you.
Great to be with you, sir.
Absolutely. Let's begin with the war in Iran. Matt, how is this playing out with President Trump's base back here in Indiana?
You know, I think the base is solidly behind our commander-in-chief, who made a bold decision. Reacting to an imminent threat to America, he decided that a religious leader who has run a country for 37 years, led demonstrations in the street that say death to America and death to Israel, been the largest state sponsor of terrorism, would no longer have that privilege. would not be allowed to build nuclear weapons unimpeded, would have a ballistic missile stockpile destroyed, and would be replaced by leaders who embrace peace throughout the region. Republicans stand behind the president. They're proud of our men and women, praying for their safety as they put themselves in harm's way, eager for their return and to celebrate them as heroes. But history will judge this as a wonderful decision by our president.
Our men and women, Lindsay, including Indiana National Guard members who are there, according to our governor, how concerned are you for their safety? And also, I'll let you respond to Matt as well.
Absolutely concerned for the safety of all of our soldiers in every theater that we're operational right now. You won't hear many disagreements that I have with Matt's comments about our recent, I was, like many Hoosiers, caught off guard by Friday night. You know, a lot of us were expecting an announcement during the State of the Union where we were expecting to have some sort of announcement from the president directly during that key moment of time with the American public to announce something, but that did not come. And so I think we were all we had gotten the fair heads up, you know? And so I think that said, many of us are still concerned, at least from the Democratic perspective, as to making sure that we have Congress having a point in the conversation with this. As our senator said in the A block, you know, we need to make sure that Congress has a conversation with regard to the War Powers Act, and we need to see and make sure that the oversight is existing. I'm not necessarily sure that Congress believes that's the case right now.
Yeah, before we move on to former Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard, Matt, I want you to respond to that because you were shaking your head in agreement.
Yeah, certainly. I think Lindsay's correct in her concern for our soldiers in every theater. But, you know, yesterday there was an action in Congress and in the House of Representatives. There was an attempt to rein in the president and bring that power back for a debate in Congress, and that failed in bipartisan fashion. I think what we're seeing as we watch Americans witness the unprecedented military successes over the last week is that they realize the world is a safer and better place given the absence of Ayatollah Khamenei, and brighter days lie ahead for America and the world.
Okay, well, former Indianapolis Mayor Greg Ballard, we just heard a little while ago, running for Secretary of State as an independent. Lindsay, does he have a shot?
Yeah, well, I mean, anybody has a shot, I guess. You know, this would be my, I'm not involved in the Secretary of State race this year. That would be the first time in 3 cycles that I have not been involved in the Secretary of State's race this year. But I'll tell you, the biggest obstacle is those signatures. And so Greg Ballard has a lot of work to do yet on getting those signatures. He can get them from any congressional district, though. He has the whole state open to him as an independent, as opposed to those guidelines that you would have to stay, the parameters you'd have to stay in as a Republican or a Democrat to get the said number from each congressional district. So he does not have that requirement. He can get them from literally standing outside of a Colts game, I suppose. Well, not that that's going to happen before the deadline, because he's got until July 15 to make this happen. So I guess we'll see if he can. I find the statements from Diego Morales concerning. I don't think that it would take much to beat Diego. I think a paper bag could do a better job than Diego could during in his capabilities as Secretary of State. So I think he absolutely has a chance, but so does Blythe Potter and so does Bo Bai.
Yeah, Matt, I'll let you respond to all of that as well. And by the way, he can stand outside of a Pacers game. How about that?
There we go.
Absolutely.
So if you're paying attention, organizing staff for Greg Ballard. Sorry, go ahead.
You know, in a week full of news, what a bizarre decision to wake up to in Indianapolis. In a week where Indiana Republicans are celebrating incredible wins for Hoosiers. The legislature and the governor have delivered affordability wins for Hoosiers. They've delivered public safety wins for Hoosiers in the recently completed legislative session. Education wins for Hoosiers. And yet we have a candidate say, being a part of the party that has fostered all those successes is no longer important to me, and I want to go it alone. Bizarre decision from my perspective. You know, Republicans know how to win elections in Indiana. President Trump has won Indiana 3 times by 19, 16, and 18% respectively. They've dominated in the midterms, the closest midterm race in the last decade being that when Governor Braun defeated then Senator Joe Donnelly for a seat in Congress, and that was a comfortable win. You know, folks said Diego would not possibly win 4 years ago, and he won by a comfortable 14% margin. The Republican Party and Governor Braun know how to win elections. They'll take nothing for granted. They'll play to win, and they will ensure that the Republican candidate wins in November.
All right, well, we will see what happens. Good to see you both.
Great to see you, sir.
Stopping by. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Will be right back.
The opinions expressed by guests on this broadcast are solely those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily reflect the views or policies of Wish TV.
All right, thank you for watching All Indiana Politics. You can hear our full conversation with Senator Todd Young and Congressman Andre Carson on the Iran conflict online. Check out the All Indiana Politics podcast online at wishtv.com. We'll be back here next Sunday morning at 9:30. Have a great rest of your weekend.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.